To convince her vampire son to accept a new human body, a mother who had been dead for 1,000 years returned to the living world by inhabiting someone else's body. Esther grabbed Elijah by the hair and, with one swift motion, slit his throat. She quickly whispered an incantation into her son's ear as blood flowed from Elijah's neck. In a desperate attempt to save his brother, Claus dug up their mother's coffin from the ground, poured gasoline all over it, and then pulled out a lighter. At that moment, Elijah's voice suddenly sounded behind him. Claus saw his brother's figure entering the old, dilapidated house, and quickly followed after him. Standing before him was Elijah, still impeccably dressed in his suit, exuding elegance and refinement, yet his demeanor was completely unlike his former self. Claus grabbed a chair and hurled it at his brother, only to hit thin air. He shouted for his mother to stop playing these illusions. Esther slowly emerged, revealing that she was in the process of transforming Elijah, and she intended to do the same to Claus. The motherly love that had been missing for 1,000 years seemed far less touching now. Claus outright rejected his mother's selfish gesture of goodwill. 1,000 years ago, it was her mistakes that destroyed Klaus's childhood, casting him into the shadow of the volatile and wrathful Michael. It was also she who turned her own children into bloodthirsty demons. And now, 1,000 years later, Esther had returned to the human world by inhabiting another body. She sought to strip away the very powers that had sustained her children, utterly disregarding the formidable enemies they had made over the past millennium. To persuade Claus to undergo the transformation, Esther resorted to recounting long-forgotten memories. There was a time when Michael loved his children dearly. He doted on his eldest son, Finn, and cherished their eldest daughter, Freya, like a precious gem. But Freya's sudden death shattered Michael's heart, and the couple's relationship began to drift apart. It was during this time that she met Klaus's biological father. Mentioning his birth father only infuriated Claus further. Upon learning that he was nothing more than an unwanted bastard, Claus often fantasized that his werewolf father would step forward, acknowledge his existence, and allow him to live carefree among the pack as a little wolf cub.
Or was he as ashamed of his bastard as you were?
Esther, however, revealed that she had returned to Michael of her own accord, fearing that if Michael learned the truth, he would kill both her and their son. But after Claus was born, Michael found happiness again, and the couple's fractured relationship was mended. They then went on to have Cole, Rebecca, and Henrik. Though Claus never realized it, it was indeed his birth that saved this nearly broken family. To fulfill Klaus's childhood wish, Esther promised to place Klaus's soul into a werewolf's body, allowing him to return to his father's pack. But the pain and disappointment he endured in his youth aren't something that can be erased with a mere token gesture in adulthood. Claus had no desire to dwell on these long-buried memories. He only wanted to find and rescue Elijah. Esther reached out and knocked her son unconscious, already prepared with a new plan to reform this stubborn and rebellious child. Finn captured the traitorous Oliver, spreading word that he would execute him at midnight tonight. He ordered the werewolves to bind Oliver and display him, so they could witness the fate of a betrayer. Haley soon received word of this. She sought out Marcel for help, hoping he could stall Finn long enough for her to save Oliver. Marcel pointed out that she couldn't succeed alone. Haley replied that the werewolf pack still had a leader. If they could find the missing Jackson, she could rally the wolves to resist the witch's brutal rule. Haley moved swiftly through the forest, soon spotting a simple, makeshift shelter. 2 arrows flew toward her in quick succession, but Haley reacted swiftly, catching them mid-air. A man with a bow slung over his back approached her with a knife in hand, but Jackson appeared just in time to prevent a fight. The man was Ansel, a new friend of Jackson's and an old-fashioned werewolf. Haley urged him to help rescue Oliver, but Jackson angrily declared that Oliver had betrayed him and that he didn't care whether the man lived or died. Disappointed, Haley turned and began to walk away. However, Ansel stood up and followed after her, leaving Haley puzzled by his intentions. Ansel explained that, although he didn't care for vampires, he couldn't stand by and let a werewolf die at the hands of witches. Claus awoke from unconsciousness to find Esther still waiting beside him. She told him the timing was perfect and revealed that Elijah was tied up in the witches' cemetery. Claus took off at once. On the other side, Haley had successfully rescued Oliver, only to be blocked by Aiden and the werewolves he led. Haley stepped forward, hoping to negotiate their release, but Aiden refused her offer. Tension escalated as both sides prepared for a fight. This absurd standoff enraged Oliver. One command from the witches had turned the once united werewolves against each other. This wasn't how they were supposed to be. The werewolves fell into collective silence, and in the end, they allowed Haley and Oliver to leave the witches' cemetery. Claus arrived late, hearing the sounds of a battle nearby. Ansel was fighting alone, and Claus rushed to help. Ansel was already wounded and exhausted. Claus swiftly snapped his opponent's neck. As they locked eyes, both were equally stunned. Claus recognized the man as his father, who had been dead for 1,000 years because Claus had seen Ansel's corpse with his own eyes. Claus refused to believe it, convinced that this was just another illusion conjured by his mother, but Ansel insisted he was real, explaining that he had awakened among the werewolves a few months ago, unaware of Esther's plans or motives.
But you are my son.
Claus noticed the mark on his father's hand, his gaze cold and resolute.
You are nothing to me.
Without another word, he turned and sped away. The rescued Oliver told Jackson that their pack was being enslaved by the witches. They needed a leader, and he begged Jackson to rise up and free the pack. Jackson remained silent. Suddenly, Oliver began to feel unwell, coughing as he collapsed to the ground. The witches had cast a spell on him, ensuring he would only live until midnight. Blood came out of Oliver's eyes and he died in Jackson's arms. Claus found the bound Elijah, tearing away the cursed doll to free him, but Elijah remained unconscious. Their mother emerged, explaining that she had brought Klaus's father back from the other world to give him the chance to experience a love he had never known. This was her gift of redemption to Claus, but Claus rejected all of his mother's attempts at reconciliation because he still couldn't forgive her for one thing. She had ordered the witches of New Orleans to hunt down his child. His most cherished daughter, Hope, had faced countless witch attacks before she was even born, causing Haley to lose her life and become a hybrid. In a fit of rage, he grabbed his mother by the collar, demanding to know why she would harm her own bloodline. Esther tried to explain, but Claus had lost all patience. He tossed her aside, rescued Elijah, and left without looking back. Finn, unaware of what had happened, rushed to his mother's side. Only he understood the reasons behind everything she had done, which was why he was willing to help her take down their younger siblings. Elijah lay unconscious in bed, while in his dream, he transformed into a blood-soaked demon, terrifying his younger self into fleeing in fear. Claus whispered to his brother, but his words couldn't reach Elijah's mind. Claus placed his hand on his brother's forehead, attempting to enter Elijah's consciousness and bring him back, but their mother's powerful magic blocked his efforts. He could only catch glimpses of fragments from Elijah's mind. Claus' nose began to drip blood, and the next second he was violently thrown off his feet and crashed into Haley, who had just come to check on the situation. Haley pulled back Elijah's collar and noticed 2 small puncture wounds. Claus explained that this was a side effect of an herb used to induce unconsciousness. He quickly realized that the herb might grow near the river's mouth and decided to search for it alone. Claus moved swiftly through the forest, his senses alert to someone watching him. He soon discovered that it was his biological father, Ansel. He warned Ansel not to follow him, but Ansel insisted that he knew where Claus could find the herb he needed. Claus, assuming this would come with some strings attached, refused Ansel's help and set off on his own. Ansel didn't play games but instead directly told him to head west. The two walked silently through the forest. Ansel was the first to break the silence, expressing his desire to have a heart-to-heart with his son. Ansel told Claus that he had once sought out Michael and fought for him, but Claus responded that this declaration of fatherly love came too late. Ansel said that he had been watching over him all along and knew that his son had never truly found happiness or peace. Claus, annoyed at being dismantled, doesn't yet know how to face the unrequited kindness of others head-on. In his anger, he grabbed his father, recounting his own brutal slaughter of an entire village, and then walked away without looking back. They finally found the herb, but it was surrounded by vervain. Ansel volunteered to collect the herb himself. Claus asked him what he wanted in return. This question angered Ansel, who stepped closer and urged Claus to enter his mind, so he could see for himself that he wasn't working with Esther. Claus says he's not interested in his brain, but Ansel realizes he's just chickening out. In order to wake up Elijah quickly, Claus chooses to go soft. As night fell, the two of them lit a campfire. Ansel processed the herb while Claus waited nearby. This might have been the only true father-son conversation Claus had ever had in his long life. Ansel pointed out that accepting Esther's offer wouldn't be a sacrifice. It would allow Claus to become a better werewolf leader and a better father, but Claus replied that he was no longer a father. Ansel explained that werewolves have a mystical bond of bloodline connection.
For when we feel everything more acutely. When you were a boy, after each full moon, I would wake closer to your village, having been drawn to you in the night. I know the call of my own blood, Claus. I know your child is still alive.
Ansel handed the prepared herb to Claus and turned to leave. Claus called out to his father, admitting that he had grown accustomed to being Michael's son and didn't even know that parents could be so kind. But he warned that Esther was skilled at manipulating emotions and would use this to get to his daughter. Hope.
You waited too long before you came to rescue me. I won't make the same mistake with Hope.
Ansel quickly realized Klaus's true intentions. With tears in his eyes, he said he believed his son wouldn't be cruel enough to kill his own father, but Klaus cleanly boils through his father's chest with his knife, then catches his father's fallen body, holding Ansel in his arms. Klaus watched in agony as the only elder who had ever truly loved him slowly died. Klaus returned home with the herb and applied it to Elijah's wounds. In the dream, Elijah was still fleeing in terror, but Klaus appeared before him.
We are the demons, lurking in shadow. We are the savage villains in fairy tales told to children. But not for my child. Not for Hope. In her story, we are the knights in shining armor.
Klaus handed a weapon to the younger version of Elijah, summoning his courage. The young Elijah surged forward and struck down his blood-soaked self, causing Elijah to awaken. The brothers faced each other in silence, but everything that needed to be said had already been understood without words. Finn's heart was hit by a sweet surprise when Camille suddenly confessed her true feelings to him. He had been posing as a psychological counselor to get close to Camille, but just moments ago, Camille mentioned she wanted to switch counselors.
You aren't finding our sessions productive?
No, that's not it. They've been great. You're really getting to know me. I want to get to know you too.
Finn thought he was about to embark on a beautiful romance, feeling a mix of excitement and even a bit of shyness. Unbeknownst to him, it's a huge conspiracy. Haley and Aiden found Marcel, and they prepared to launch an attack against Esther. Marcel mentioned that Finn seemed to have a thing for Camille, which led to this elaborate honey trap. Feigning hesitation, Camille explained that these feelings were affecting her work and communication. She pretended to panic and got up to leave. Finn hesitated but ultimately decided to seize this opportunity for love. He called out to Camille. Seeing the plan unfold smoothly, Camille returned to report the success. They quickly gathered to discuss their strategy. Camille brought out a box filled with weapons that Father Kieran had collected for fighting witches. Josh's ignorance amuses Aiden. Marcel pulled out a pair of shackles that could prevent a witch from using magic once they were bound. Meanwhile, Finn received a task from his mother. She ordered him to bring Camille to her, with hidden motives. The two arranged to meet at the bar. Finn thoughtfully brought drinks over to Camille. They had a pleasant conversation. Suddenly, Camille's phone rang. She said she needed to take the call and walked outside. Finn watched her go, feeling a pang of reluctance, but in the next moment, Camille disappeared. He chased her outside the bar and saw a werewolf biting Camille's neck. He shouted to stop it, but the other party quickly climbed the high wall and left. Finn rushed to check on Camille's condition, only to be taunted by the werewolf. He looked in the direction it had gone, but the werewolf vanished once again. When he turned back, Camille had disappeared, too. Regaining his composure, Finn called Aiden, stating that he could soon use a locator spell to find Camille. He asked Aiden to join him in tracking down the werewolf. Aiden hung up and relayed the news to the others waiting nearby. Haley bit into her wrist, using her blood to heal Camille's bite wound. Josh says it's a really bad Friday.
It's not so bad.
Finn and Aiden met in a narrow alley. Aiden mentioned that a few of the short guy's friends wanted revenge, and he planned to lure Finn to the altar where they could ambush him, but Finn pointed out that Aiden's brother was one of the rescued werewolf children. He grabbed Aiden and threw him into the church. Josh hurried over to check on his injured lover. Finn pushed open the doors and walked in, raising his hands to light all the candles in the church. Josh tried to approach, but Finn quickly subdued him, throwing him down beside Aiden. Haley rushed from behind and knocked Finn to the ground. Finn is still concerned about Camille's condition, but Haley doesn't answer and strikes again. Finn used magic to knock Haley down, declaring that he was going to rip out her heart. He chanted a spell, and Haley was immediately overwhelmed with excruciating pain, blood pouring from her chest. Seeing Haley on the brink of death, an arrow suddenly pierced Finn's chest. Jackson had arrived as backup. He drew his bow again and shot another arrow into Finn's right leg, causing Finn to collapse onto the steps in agony. As Finn reached out to pull the arrow from his chest, Camille quickly shackled his wrists. Finn raised his hands, trying to use his magic, only to realize his powers were suppressed. The plan had worked perfectly. Haley asked Jackson how he managed to find her so accurately. Jackson explained that he had spent a lot of time tracking her when he was still a wolf, suggesting it might have been some kind of instinct. Haley apologized, saying she might not be the girl he had been waiting for. Jackson didn't deny it.
You're not the girl I waited for.
You're better.
Who says a broken mirror can't be made whole again? Davina was chanting a spell in front of a mirror, and the shattered pieces miraculously began to reassemble. Cole quietly approached from behind and whispered softly in Davina's ear. Startled, Davina caused the mirror to shatter once more. They had fled to a remote motel to hide from Claus. Cole urged Davina to relax and get some sleep, but Davina was too worried to think about anything else. In the middle of their conversation, Cole's arm suddenly throbbed with intense pain, leaving Davina confused. Cole explained that this was his mother's way of summoning him. As a line of bloody text appeared on his arm, with no other choice, they drove toward the French Quarter. During the drive, Cole began sharing stories from his past. He spoke of his love for magic and how much he enjoyed it, but becoming a vampire had robbed him of the joy he found as a witch, leading him to seek thrills through bloodshed and violence. He admitted that his mother had sent him to spy on the most beautiful witch in town.
Can't believe your mom sent you here to flirt with me.
No, Mum, she sent me to follow you. The flirting bit was me.
His smooth talk was nothing short of impressive. When Cole returned to Esther, his mother asked if he had retrieved the white oak stake. He replied that progress was slow but assured her everything was under control. Esther exposed his secret about Michael's resurrection but didn't reprimand him much. Instead, she healed the wounds on his arm. Esther demanded that Cole do whatever it took to obtain the white oak stake. Cole relayed his mother's intentions to Davina, stating that he refused to be her pawn. All he wanted was a little of Davina's blood. 100 years ago, he had built a secret base with a witch who happened to be Davina's ancestor. Only Davina's blood could unlock the chamber. He hands Davina the dagger. They successfully entered the chamber, which was filled with objects crafted through dark magic. Cole picked up a dagger, explaining that if they stabbed Claus in the heart with it, he would fall into an endless sleep, and Davina's friends wouldn't have to die. He introduced Davina to a spell called the Camia spell, which could change the composition of materials, turning silver into gold. He asked Davina to hold his hand, explaining that the Camia spell required a spark between two people. Davina took Cole's hand. They lifted a rope together, closed their eyes, and chanted the spell in unison. Cole couldn't help but slowly move his hand up Davina's arm, and the rope instantly ignited with flames, making Davina smile with joy. Cole seized the moment, drawing closer. Their eyes met, and a spark of emotion passed between them, but the flames from the burning rope scorched Davina, breaking the moment of intimacy. Cole picked up a silver bracelet and tied it around Davina's wrist, saying it was a gift from him to her. Exhausted, Davina sank into the sofa, and Cole grabbed a blanket to cover her.
But you don't already.
He gently carried the sleeping Davina back to the loft and laid her carefully on the bed. The white oak stake was right in front of him, yet he didn't take it. But Cole failed to notice that Marcel had quietly appeared behind him.